Thank you, panellists. I think it's clear to me that there are two sort of final observations that we could make. One is about that sense of needing to not lose sight of critical analysis of violence against women. And there's been lots of argument about analysing research data, being clear about what political agendas are. The other issue also is the tension of actually truly talking about men as victims. And I think that some of our discussions this afternoon have highlighted that we need to start with men as victims in the same way that we would start with other groups of people that are experiencing violence in their intimate relationships. We need to examine it for what is happening in the relationship and work out ways in which we can engage with men in a meaningful way that will encourage them to come forward. So there is certainly tensions between the way in which we work, and I think your challenge, Anthony, is to be clear about who we're talking about when we're talking about men. Are we talking about men as victims? Are we talking about men as perpetrators or users of violence? And is it possible for men to be both? I mean, I think there are further debates that we need to go further with. I'm glad that we've had the opportunity today to at least start to tease out some of the issues. And I think that I see this as a sort of a funnel process where we've started from the big picture, and our efforts in time to come need to more clearly refine what it is that we're talking about and the most effective approaches. I thank the panellists very much for their encouragement.
I thought it was very useful and provocative, and I think we need to have more discussions like this. My concern was that there was a startling omission about children as victims. We concentrated very much on gender issues as men being victims or perpetrators and women being victims or perpetrators. The experience of family violence, if you want to call it that, is not gender discriminatory where children are concerned, that they're experiencing it, both male and female children, and they're the potential future victims and or perpetrators as they grow. And that I actually believe that the only way we can actually challenge the notion of male privilege and entitlement is to start in the schools with children, talking to them about what a respectful relationship is, what actually constitutes abuse, because by the time we get to adults, we are dealing with then crisis and reactive modes of service delivery. We need to be looking a lot younger, and we need to be starting to challenge the stereotypes and things that we have with our kids, because they're the ones who are. And I just was very concerned that there was, they are the silent and often unheard majority of the victims of domestic violence, where we talked a lot today about, how many may have been male or female. We left out, a whole majority of victims.
So do you think that perhaps a forum dealing specifically with children and violence might be useful? Could you see that being somewhere where we might start?
I think that would be, very useful. But, in the context that, currently we are talking about a gender-specific analysis of domestic violence, and we can't remove that because we are talking about the way we socialise young boys and to be, competitive and aggressive and to have a sense of entitlement in society. Until we challenge that at a very young age, then we're going to have to undo a lot of learning that they've learnt and deal with reactive sort of situations. So.
A lot of these issues seem to come back to. This was discussed a lot in the hypothetical, come back to one's political approach, or whether one takes a feminist or pro-feminist approach, or whether one takes another political approach. And that was the area where I felt that there was a great deal of bias towards the pro-feminist approach and not much from anyone else. And a lot of that I felt was a thinly veiled attempt at man-bashing. I felt the audience and the panel were had a lot of misandry there, a lot of hatred for men. The way that the women in the audience would applaud at the statements like, men should be locked in their houses at night and women should be allowed to go out, things like that. It distresses me that while some men are violent, most of the panellists seem to paint a picture of men are violent and all men should be locked up. That seemed to be the approach, and that seemed to be sympathised by a lot of the women in the audience, and that was very distressing to me because I don't see the world in that way. But I was glad to see that it wasn't all one-sided. It could have been 10 against 0, so that was good. And each panellist, even though I may have disagreed with that political side of them, they all had something good and positive to contribute and issues for me to think about. So that was good.
So there were issues that that came up during this afternoon's forum that challenged perhaps some of your thoughts before you came to the forum?
Well, the gay male and the lesbian speakers dealing with those issues, they were some territory because I work in a men's referral centre that deals with all men, but we so obviously don't deal much with lesbian women. So that was good to hear about the issues amongst lesbian women, and equally with gay men, and they're those are the only ones that come to mind.